Alright, hey, this is a bit of a test video, but if it works out nicely, then we'll keep it as our first. So let's see. Here we have a question. This question comes from the questions you have in your notebook, and it's question 58 inside of your Apollo book. So just take a look at question 58 and you'll be able to follow along if you open your book. This might have been a question you already did, but if it is, it doesn't matter. So let's see. The first thing you should do is look at the question. What is 10% of 7/8 of 160? And as always, what you should do is write down what's important. So here we have of. So we already know multiplication is involved. We know that percents are involved, and we know that this is our starting point. So let's see, it's already getting blurry. Let's hope it doesn't get too blurry. Can you see that? Alright, so we have to work this way basically, from our starting point to our last point, which will be 10%. Okay? So again, the question is, what is 10% of 7/8 of 160? So again, this here is our starting point. Car alarm has just gone off. Try to ignore it. Anyways, let's see. Alright, so here we have 160, and what we're supposed to do is write 160 here, and then multiply it by something. So what do we have to multiply it by? Let's see, we have to multiply it by this. So 160 as a fraction is 160 over 1. And then since it says of, you go like this. And then this here, you bring it down there. And you just multiply now. So let's see, you can multiply this straight across, or you can reduce things before you multiply them. So what we'll do is reduce. How many 8s are in 8? There's just 1. And how many 8s are in 160? Basically just ask yourself how many 8s are in 16. It's 2, and then just put that 0 there. So now it becomes much easier. What's 20 times 7? That gives you 140. Again, for a shortcut, you do 2 times 7 is 14, and then you just chop on that 0. And then below you just do 1 times 1, and that's 1. So essentially, what do we have? 140 basically, right? It's not a good habit to erase things, but here we have it, we've erased it. So we have 140. So now we're up to here, and now we have to just do that. So we do 140 times, because see, of, alright, times what? What's left, which is 10%. And you go 10%. The decimal point's here originally, and says it's percent, which is per 100. You move it over 2 places. Alright? The answer, of course, you know, is 14. Why? Because whenever you multiply something by 10, all you have to do is get the decimal place from the original number and shift it over 1 place to the left, because that's the way you reduce it. So here we have our answer. It's 14. And now take a look at the possible answers on the side. And those were our options. And there it is. Again, so here we have a question. What kind of question is it? It's really it's a question that involves percents and fractions, but really it's a 2-step problem that involves multiplication the whole way through. What you're supposed to ask yourself first, always, is what does this question mean? They want to know the part of something. Alright? And the minute you say the word of, you know multiplication is involved. Look at the last number here. That's the only one that really has any value. Because if I ask you what's 10% of something, you kind of can't answer it unless you know the something, right? Or if I ask you what's 7/8? Well, how do you answer that? You always have to know what, 7/8 of what, or 10% of what. So take a look here. Here's where it all begins, 160 again. So you do 160, and then you work your way backwards. So to review, we have 160. Every number in the world is really a fraction over 1. So, well, that number over 1. So you put 160 over 1 times, because times has to correspond with of, 7/8. And again, you could have multiplied across without reducing it first, but you would have gotten an awfully big number, and it's hard to work with. Again, the test is timed, so it's all about doing things as quickly as possible. So instead of doing that, what we did is we reduced. We got this 8, and we asked ourselves how many 8s are in 8. Of course, it's just 1 8 in 8. And then the same thing here. How many 8s are in 160? Which left us with 20. And then we just multiplied across with our simpler numbers. 20 times 7 gave us 140. 1 times 1 gave us 1, which is 140 over 1 is the same thing as 140, so you erased the denominator and just kept 140. And we were only halfway there, so we put the 140 here and multiply it again, because the word of appears twice in this question, once here and once there. So 140 times, to represent that of, 10%. And it's the way you multiply 10% is as a decimal. And again, I just wrote 10, and then I shifted over the decimal place 2 places to the left. So really, I did 140 times 0.10, which gave us 14. We glanced over here, and 14's right there. So I think this came out pretty well. I'm proud of myself. Alright, so here we have it. Alright, make sure you take notes. Make sure, again, you follow all the steps that I did. There will be a ton of questions just like this one that's going to ask you, what is 5% of 5/8 of 200? And you should be able to do it. So try to do something kind of like an RLR for it. An RLR where you set up your own kind of questions. You know how you always end it that way? Try that, alright? So that's it for now. I want to make every video between 4 to 5 minutes, and this one's already on 6. So I'll see you next time.